All right. Well, thank you for joining us for another Phoenix Film Revival podcast. This is episode number 9. Don't really have a title for it. Oh, we did talk to Isaiah for his podcast. Yeah, we'll call it Isaiah's podcast. But we'll have that here in a little bit. We just finished Xana's show on Friday. Awesome show. She had it up for 2 weeks. If you didn't get a chance to see that, be sure to keep an eye out. I'm sure she'll have those pieces up again at some point.
Hopefully we'll have her on the podcast soon, too.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we'll definitely, we'll have her up for one of these podcasts here pretty soon. Yeah, so there's that. We have the photo walk planned for this Friday, the Arizona State Fair. So hopefully you guys can make that out. That's going to be on the 25th. It's going to be different. It's a different photo walk.
The details are they on your Instagram or on your website?
They'll be on Instagram, but we'll also have that up on our website. So I'll get those details up tonight and make sure they're available. So when you're listening, they're there.
Nice.
So, but yeah, we're gonna do a photo walk around the state fair. So if you have slow film, you'll definitely want to be bringing higher speed film. So preferably 400 speed or higher, and then you'll probably want to push 400 to like 800. Shoot it at 8, and then we can process it in the lab. But yeah, so we'll have the photo walk at the fair, which will be fun. Lots of light. So, bring color film. Portra 400 or Portra 800 would be perfect. So that's going to be the most urgent thing. most relevant.
Most up and coming thing.
Yeah. We want to talk about Isaiah's show that's coming up. We'll have more details here in a minute. Here's Isaiah. All right. So we have our podcast with Isaiah today. Isaiah Romero. And Danny De La Cruz is going to be asking some good questions. So let's do this.
So, yeah.
Oh yeah.
So you got, first and foremost, congratulations on the show.
Thank you.
And Phoenix Film Revival. You guys bringing on the art.
Oh yeah, I'm excited. I'm very excited.
I'm pretty pumped for it. Be good.
Now, how long did it take you to prepare for the show? Because I remember Daniel and I talking about you were preparing for the show in the summertime, even before, I think in the springtime, late spring.
Yeah, I think I asked Isaiah back when you did the photo walk. I was like, hey,
quite a while ago.
You seem like you take pictures.
It's funny. I'm still putting the last few pieces together, but I mean, since then, it's literally just been about me building a catalog of photographs. Because at the time, even then, I was shooting. I mean, most of the stuff that I was shooting was just I'd shoot a roll, I'd scan something, and that was what I had to put out. I didn't really have a backlog of anything at the time, so it's just been a lot of shooting constantly. But yeah, I've been preparing for it for a while. All the small details, everything.
Has the theme been the same for the most part, or has it changed a little bit? Because since I started following you on the Instagram, I mean, it's all been. And I'll definitely ask details on that, but has it been basically the same sort of ethos, frame of thought, and
I would say so. I would say that the I guess the theme or the things that I shoot all have to do with a lot of the time that I go out and shoot. I don't usually shoot in the afternoon. I don't like to. I have a process where I like to wake up early and then I'll shoot for a specific amount of time every morning, and I just give that as my dedicated time where I have like 3 hours, and that's what I do. And I think that was the frame of mind behind a lot of it. It was just my past year of mornings, of me waking up and finding what I could find at those times. So
is that why? Because I looked through your Instagram and I noticed that unless it's a specific portrait, there's no one in your pictures.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It seems to be a common theme of not just cars, but mostly American cars and real, it seems like nothing newer than the 80s sort of vibe.
Right.
Is the no people in your subject or in your photographs just a circumstance of being up early in the morning, or is that something that you want to shoot on purpose?
I think it's something I do on purpose.
Yeah.
I like to remove everything I can from an image that is like telling of any specific person or specific thing. Even like I hate trash cans. I try and avoid anything I can't. Like, trash cans are just one thing that'll throw off a whole image. Get the, here in Mesa, the bright blue and the black. Yeah. They're always out there. And it's just something that I look at every time, and it's like, I know everyone has one, but it throws me off so bad. But I try and remove every element that I find distracting and just keep it with the basics of exactly what you said, kind of pre-80s stuff, because I want it to feel very dated. I want it to, I want to use the vehicle as a vehicle to take you to a time, maybe that, I don't know if you necessarily experienced, but just something that reminds you of not now.
Yeah.
Well, that would be very interesting because, the trash cans would absolutely take away the nostalgia, because I don't, in the 80s, the only trash cans were the kind that Oscar the Grouch used to live
exactly.
in.
The metal bins, I'll leave a metal bin in any day. Metal bin, trash bags by themselves, that's fine. But those giant plastic trash containers, I'm not a fan of.
Yeah, they're very functional, but not very, don't make good
even license plates. I can't stand license plates either. The historic vehicle ones are okay because they're the copper and red, and that looks nice, and it kind of sometimes matches if the car's, rusted and patinaed, but I'm not a fan of the newer ones.
I love that red.
Yes, the red ones are nice. I like those.
Have you found the perfect car that you would love to photograph, or is there just anything that brings up nostalgia?
I think that there's a lot. So for me, it wasn't ever about the cars in the beginning.
Okay.
But I think that over time, it has been, and now I think there are a couple cars that I'm like, oh, these are the ones that I'm like, I like this a lot. A lot of what I originally liked to start shooting were like old Chevys, just because I remember my grandpa having a lot of them, my dad having a lot of old Chevys, and I really liked some of those style cars. But now I'm like, I'm so all over the place. I kind of like the old school muscle cars, but I'm more of a fan of like the lowrider style, like the 60s. I like the 60s Bel Airs. I like the Impalas, obviously, but.
Yeah.
I'll be honest, I'm all over the place. I don't think I could find one specific that I'm like, this is the one. I am a fan of the Corvair. Love the Corvair. Chevy Corvair. It's an old, like, smaller, I think they made a 2-door and a 4-door version, but they're just this tiny, the engine's in the back, and they're really, really cool looking. They just always remind me of the 60s. Like, you see it, and you're like, this is the 60s.
Did your dad collect cars, or you just happen to have old Chevys, or?
My grandpa, on his side, he had an auto body shop. So growing up, my dad would like restore cars with him. And then when I was growing up with them, my dad would buy and sell a lot of cars. So when I was like from 1 to 6 years old, there's pictures of me just with all these there's some Chevy trucks. There's some old shit, like the 52 Chevys. My dad loved the older 50s Chevys, had a bunch of those. So that was like my real exposure as a kid. I mean, he would constantly get something, fix it up, sell it. So I saw a lot of cars.
Saw a lot of cars.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Are you from Phoenix?
I'm from Colorado Springs originally.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I was born in Colorado Springs. And then I moved here when I was around 5.
Oh, so, yeah, you've been
pretty
here
much grew up here, yeah.
Yeah. What, did your parents also own cameras or anything like that? Or
my dad's side, not as much. My mom's side of the family, I think my grandpa on that side, his father, took photos back in the day. And that was actually when I got my first camera, probably when I was 14, 15. My grandpa gave me his father's camera, and I used that for a while. That was like my introduction to film photography. But I don't recall cameras ever being used in my family. I remember like my grandparents later on getting their first digital camera, and it was like, whoa, we have a camera now to take pictures of. Other than that, like when I was really young, my parents would use disposables a lot, and they had probably like some point and shoots, but it wasn't very prominent aside from that.
But so you just started shooting film right off the bat then, huh?
Yeah, that's actually, I started off shooting 35 solely. And then I got my first digital camera way later on down the road. And then I moved back a couple of years ago. Slowly started transitioning back.
Hell yeah.
Into medium format, right?
Yes, directly into medium format. I don't like 35 millimeter very much. But that's just me.
I feel like most people just, as soon as they get a taste of larger, it's like, how do I go back to 35?
And I'm kind of a perfectionist too. So the fact that I like doing stuff myself, and I'm also a perfectionist. So the fact that I couldn't scan very well, like my 35 millimeter negatives at home, I'm like, ugh. Even if I get a bad scan of a medium format, it's huge, so it looks better, It's something I'm always like, I don't know. I'm picky.
Is that scanning the negative your biggest attraction to medium format, or do you like?
I think that I like the shooting component of it a lot more as well. I like slowing down. I like that with medium format, especially large format, where you have to really just think about the one shot. Medium format for me, I have 10 usually when I shoot my 6.7. So I like thinking that I only have those 10 frames to fill. I like having to be like, this is what I want to shoot. And when I have that frame, or if I see something that I like, I have to really, in that moment, decide like, man, do I want this or do I just pass it up, I guess. So I enjoy the restriction of medium format. I think that's something that I enjoy a lot.
You carry that, the Mamiya 67, you carry that thing around?
Everywhere. The RB67, that's where I keep it on me at all times. I have it in my car right now. I should have brought it with me, should I?
Yeah.
I had it set on my lap.
That thing's weighty.
It's not bad. It was, when I first started shooting it, it was awful to take around. I made a huge mistake. I don't remember where I was. I went on a hike and I decided to take it with me, tripod and everything, over my shoulder. And that was the worst decision. I remember walking like 2 miles and I was like, this I shouldn't have done. I'll never do this again. This is something I could shoot on 35. It wouldn't make a difference.
Right.
Yeah, it's crazy. I think how on photo walks, people like to carry that thing around. I'm like, dude, no way, man.
Yeah. I did it the first one and it's heavy. It's a lot. It's
a workout.
It is. You got to just hold it in place the whole time, and you're like, "Oh man,
it's a huge flex."
Yeah. I mean, I'm like, that's why they made those twin lens reflex.
Yes,
carry those around if you want to shoot medium format.
Ones, I agree.
Yeah, those are. That's
the State Fair camera in my mind. Yep. I loved the twin lens at the State Fair. Is just iconic to me. That's what you got to do.
It's perfect.
Did that walk already happen? Or are you guys?
No, that's coming up. Yep,
25th.
25th.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's going to be a good one.
We're stoked.
I'm very excited for that, actually.
Yeah, I wish I could go.
We'll push you around.
We'll see. We'll see what's going on there.
Put you in a wheelchair. We'll get you.
So when you started thinking about your show coming up here, I mean, it's, again, a long time. How are you printing those up? I mean, it's awesome that you have, it's mostly, if not all, analog, right?
Yeah, it's all analog photos.
And you're printing them on also, and I noticed that they're mostly color.
Mm-hmm.
How are you printing those done or getting those printed?
I print some of the smaller ones myself at home. I have a medium format printer that I use. It's just digital printing. And then for the larger ones we're going to get done, I'm having done at ImageCraft.
ImageCraft, so where I work.
Yeah, so we're getting some larger lambdas done, which is going to be fun.
Yeah. What's cool about that is those are RA4 process. So the same as what you would do in a darkroom lab. That's still the traditional process. Instead, it uses a machine to print. So you don't have to mess around with that.
Yeah.
You had that experience. You got
I did quite a few color prints with the RA4 in the darkroom. I did some color stuff, but I decided that it took a little bit more time to have that ready by November, so we're going to hold off on showing some of those. But I do have quite a few that'll be. I have a couple 11x14s that'll be.
Yeah, you mentioned being a perfectionist. I would imagine that the dark room is gonna you would live in there forever. On just
the first week I spent like 20 something hours in there just on one image, and I was just so stressed. And I finally got it out, and I was like, "This is the colors I want. This is the time," and everything looked beautiful. And I held it up, and I took it home, put it in a frame and everything. I was like, this is beautiful, and realized I had printed it backwards. I read the text in the car and I was like, I cannot believe this. I was so mad, and I didn't even go back to reprint it, but I was like, man, this is such a good image. I just can't believe that happened.
Limited edition, 1 of 1.
There you go. 1 of 1 backwards. Just, oh man.
Oh wow. It happens.
It's teachable. I learned from it.
Yeah.
And now after this, I will check 4 or 5 times instead of just twice.
Did you like the time in the dark room though?
I do. I enjoy it. Yeah, it's very peaceful. I didn't play much music while I was in there, so it was kind of spooky at times. You're just like, oh man, silence.
Yeah.
But I enjoy it. It's peaceful, especially silver gelatin. Just black and white stuff is the best. Mm-hmm. I almost prefer that process to color, obviously, because it's easier. But I like seeing the results right off the bat. I like being able to be in there and looking at it as it develops and being like, oh man, this is it.
There's definitely more control over black and white. I feel you can control the contrast, dodge and burn, all that sort of stuff. Colors will definitely.
Which, don't get me wrong, I love
direction.
color, and I'm very excited to do more of it. It's just one of those things where you're sitting there for the first 5 minutes in total darkness, like no red light, nothing. You're just like, oh man,
Yep.
okay. And then you put it in the tube and you let it run, and then finally at the end, it's kind of fun because you get to pull it out, and it's like, oh man, there's color here now. It's a good feeling. I enjoy that.
That's definitely a process that I want to start getting in on there too. But it's would you say, because what would you tell someone like me and someone who wants to get started into color processing? Is there anything that you really have to be careful of, or should we all just jump right in there and just start doing it and getting her done?
I think that a few things that I would say would be to shoot like you're shooting slide film. You have to really nail that exposure if you want it to show up. You know, like with a scan, there's a lot of flexibility. You can kind of pull things, you can push things. It's really simple to get some details back. Whereas if you start doing what you would do with the black and white print, where you're trying to dodge and burn, it changes a lot about the color, the saturation, the contrast, and it can kind of look weird. So there's a little bit less control over lighting in that regard. But aside from that, just learn about the filters first before printing, because that's something that I just did not understand and took me a while to like correct some of the color. But that was the other thing that I learned very quickly, is that if you have an overexposed negative or one that's, underexposed, it's very hard to print after that. It's very hard to correct that in the darkroom.
Do you think now, knowing that what it takes to get a good image printing in the darkroom, do you think that's going to change a little bit, or at least tune in how you photograph from here on out as far as your exposure and what you need to get done in camera before you decide to go ahead and print it up?
Oh yeah, 100%. I think for a while there was a lot of advice from people where they're like, oh yeah, overexposed by like a stop, or overexposed by 2 stops with color film because it's very flexible. And Kodak is, and Fuji can be, but I think that after doing darkroom stuff, I realized like, oh man, no, I really need to know what I want to be exposed properly if I'm going to print this in the darkroom. So it's definitely made me slow down and think like, oh, maybe I shouldn't overexpose this. Like maybe the shadows are okay where they are. So it has slowed me down a little bit.
Yeah, getting stuff printed at the Walgreens is a little different than getting it done yourself. Huh?
Yes, 100%. Oh, man. The days. I wish we could still do that. I was thinking, on the way over, I was like, man, I wish Costco still develops film. That'd just be fast. I remember dropping it off there and it just being like, that was so quick.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, now you got to resort to, if you want it professionally done, you got to resort to professional that as you start to home develop more and more, you realize how really not as professional these places are that you drop off film really are.
Right.
And it gets kind of funky. I have a friend who's just starting to shoot film, and he's all about, trying to get all the technique down, and, reminds me of myself, and I'm sure a lot of us when we first started, like, oh my God, I need this, I need that, I need the water needs to be exactly this much, or this, that, and the other. And now it's like, you know what? I almost cursed. Sorry. Just shoot it. And then from there, you're going to start learning how to develop your own film. And then that's also going to be part of, especially with black and white, I think people don't realize is that you shoot, now that you know how to print, you shoot a certain way now. And then you can learn how to develop a certain way now. And
that development changes a ton too with black and white. That's a game changer.
Oh yeah, you have so much control with your process when you go to develop. You can get more contrast or less contrast with all your developers, all that sort of stuff.
It's another, I call it magic potion in order to get your film going. So how many images do you have or do you want to have for your show?
Total, so I think I'm going to be showing, let me see here. Got to do some math probably.
One giant.
Just one image. It's going to be big though. It'll be wall sized.
Wall size.
I'll have, I think, about 21 smaller images, 11 by 14s, around that number, and then 6 larger prints, as well as some other random prints that I've done, just different media types and whatnot.
Now, I've seen some of the posts that you have, the posters that you have, nostalgic old car posters to announce the show. Is there a running theme that you want people to realize on the show that you hope people grasp onto, or is it okay if they just look at the pictures and just go, oh, they're pretty or anything? Or is there something that you want them specific that you want them to take away without? I was just telling Daniel, it's like, I don't like telling musicians or asking musicians, hey man, what do those lyrics mean? Mm-hmm. You know, something like that, because, you know, at one point it's personal to everyone. Mm-hmm. But if there's some sort of takeaway that people should get from your show without forcing it on them, is there something that, you mean, you don't have to tell us what it is, of course, we should go to the show and figure it out, but
I think that it's definitely pretty open-ended. I don't want people to have to think too hard into it, but I think that if they choose to, or maybe if they slow down and maybe read some more into it, there is something there. I think that there's a lot to do with the relationship to the sunrise. I think that that's a big thing for me. There's a lot of like metaphor and stuff, I guess, with that. And I think that this show is definitely themed more towards car pictures. I think I said earlier, cars were never the beginning for me. I used that as just kind of a way to get out and make myself shoot, because I wasn't interested in much and I had to go out and make myself do something. But this show will definitely be geared towards that. And I think that overall, it's not necessarily about the vehicles as much as it is about nostalgia in that regard. Just taking you to a time that you didn't even have to experience, but it's just you want to be there again. Something that's like making you feel like you're missing home almost.
Was there a lot of things in your life that happened early in the morning that you have fond memories of?
I think that I just like the relationship with the sun. I think everyone has that primal thing of like, I mean, if you have a good sunset, you see pictures of it everywhere online. You know what I mean? Everyone has that day where it's like the sunset, and you just, for some reason, everyone had to take a picture. You know what I mean? It makes you feel good. Right. And for me, I enjoy that, but something about the sunrise is so much more peaceful because there's nobody there. It's very uninterrupted. You know, sunset has become kind of chaotic, especially living in the city. It's traffic and you're having to go from one place to the other. I'm not a fan of that. I like being able to wake up and there's nothing. The roads are empty and there's still time to anticipate this thing that's coming, especially when it's dark outside. It's always more like the sun's coming. You know, I enjoy that. So I think that that's just something that's happened within the last year. A lot of this is just a collection of me shooting my past year. And that's the time that I've spent to choose shooting every day from usually 5 to around 8. So it's just kind of my year in reflection of dealing with every day and watching the sunrise.
Man, that's real early, man. What I imagine that waking up that early and having a state of mind to photograph something coming up or anticipating, as you said, is there a thought process that you go through in your head, like you set up somewhere and you anticipate certain things, or is it something that do you continually go back to a certain spot or something that you noticed before, maybe at a different time of day? How do you pick a certain spot that to photograph, or is that just something that there's not much planning going in?
So sometimes there's usually not much planning. There's usually not much planning at all. I just start driving in a different direction either way. I have the option to turn left out onto University or right out onto University. And I just pick one every day and like, this is where I'm going to go. Sometimes I will go back to places that I really like. There are a few neighborhoods around that I'm like, oh, I love this neighborhood. And sometimes, when the light hits it right, it's like, man, this could create a really cool image. So I'll sometimes go back and visit places that I really liked, but didn't take a lot of pictures of. But usually it's just I find somewhere to go and I just weave through the streets, just up and down, aimlessly.
In basically any random street that you just happen to not have gone down before. Yeah,
I try and avoid the really cookie cutter neighborhoods. I try and avoid anything that's just like, looks the same and looks really new. Anything that looks like it was made after the 2000s. It's just like, I'm not that interested in it. I try and find older neighborhoods. That's a good start. Other than that, there's not really any direction I go. I usually think about it like the game of Snake that you'd play where you go and you find one, you grow a little bit longer. It's not always in the same order, but it's just, you just weave through and sometimes you find yourself back at the same spot. So you make a different turn and just keep going until you find another one. That's usually what I do.
Do you do this stuff before work or mostly on weekends or
before work? I'm kind of, I got lucky. My girlfriend works at a coffee shop. So every morning when she has to be there, she's up earlier than me.
Okay.
So she's really the trooper. I just wake up and sometimes force myself to take her there. So I'll leave. We'll get there at 4:45. I start my morning off with a coffee right off the bat.
Mm-hmm.
And then that time is just when I like up and leave and do my thing for a while. And usually I'll do it before work if I have time. I mean, it's 5 a.m., so I usually don't have to be anywhere until at least 8, which means I'll have 2 hours of shooting if I just go out and directly do that at minimum, making time for myself before, but I try and do it as often as possible.
Well, I think that's definitely, at the very least, even if like some of us weren't creating art at the ass crack of dawn, I imagine that it's a great way to put yourself in a good frame of mind to start your workday. I mean, I'm not sure what kind of job you have or what your day job is, but some of us have shitty day jobs.
Right.
And, it's just a great way to almost be in a meditative state to create something and then go
very much
right
so. And I feel very productive with that, too. I think that even on those days where it's just like you have a lot to do otherwise and you don't feel like you have time for yourself, it's nice to start the day off where it's like, well, I already did it. My favorite part of the day, or the most calming part, is already done. I got that out of the way. It was like starting the day off with my end goal already finished. It's awesome. It's like, even if I have an awful day after, it's like, well, I went out and shot and I got 3 hours out of it. I saw what I wanted to see. And
do you remember the first time you decided to get up that early and do it? Or do you remember the first time you did it and you go, I've got to do this every day from here on out because I got a great shot? I
think that it was winter time, maybe 2 years back, or probably about a year ago is when I really was like, oh man, this is like a year and a half ago. I would say this is when I really wanted to start waking up early, is when it started getting dark. And it stayed dark until like 7. That was awesome to me. I was like, wow, this is kind of wild, because I wanted to shoot night stuff, but I'm not a night person. I can't do like 11 o'clock at night. I'm ready for sleep. I can't. I'm weird like that.
You get up at 3 a.m.
Exactly. Right. So I liked that time because I was like, oh, I could still shoot some, night stuff. I wanted to go find some spots that were like, typically had a lot of people around them at nighttime where there's cars still, like, some bars or liquor stores. There's still cars. I wanted to avoid that. I wanted to not be any people there. So in the morning, I figured, I was like, oh, this is nice. I can, not have to interact with anyone. I can set up my shot, take my time, and it's still dark out. And I think that after doing that I think there was like 3 or 4 times where I just woke up and I was like, oh man, this is awesome. Because I didn't have to, I remember it was like terrifying for me to have to deal with people at first, because I would literally just go set up my tripod in front of their house, and occasionally people would come out, and that interaction's odd to me sometimes. I've learned to be way better with it now. But back then I was like, I want to avoid this. So I would wake up early and then go set up my shot, and I'm like, there's no one that's going to come out right now. Everyone's sleeping for a while. So that was the start. And then after that, it just turned into, I like seeing the times change and the light change. Like the sunrise started coming earlier and then later, and it's really fun to kind of anticipate that.
Do you remember that first photograph that you shot that says, man, it really is worthwhile dealing with sleepyheads or waking up in the morning?
I think that there was one that I liked a lot, and then I was like, oh man, this is the photo, because it was this really cool time of the morning where there was almost no light out, but the sky was just starting to change from that like purple to pink, and somehow there was still no light on this one house that I was shooting with this car out in front of it. And I shot the picture, and the light from the house was perfect to where the windows were glowing, and the reflection off of the car was just perfect. And I was like, wow, this looks really cool, all for it to be really out of focus. So I was just like, oh well. But that day I was like, man, this is a great image. I think that I could go back and try and make something like this again. I really liked the way the sky looked, and it was unplanned, but all the things came together, and I was like, man, I want to try and do this again.
Yeah, I think that's a great feeling. I think everyone should have, even though the picture, it's funny because I just talked about the first time that when I decided to get serious about photography too, I got really excited about a really crappy picture. And then it didn't matter from then on out. It was like, okay, it's time to get serious about this project, about this passion, and we don't all need to be Ansel Adams out the gate to get it to happen.
Yes, I agree.
And do you speaking of the Do you get a lot of people coming out, or a few people coming out and interacting with you, either good or bad, and saying, hey, don't take pictures of my house, or don't take pictures of my car? Or
a couple times. Most of the interactions I've had are pretty good. There are some times when it's funny. The most concern that I ever get is asking if I'm with the government. I've had that happen like 3 or 4 times. They're like, "Hey, are you with the city? Are you with the government?" I was like, "No, I'm not sure what. No, I'm not. I'm just taking a picture of this." I usually explain it pretty calmly, and it's not usually a big deal. There are a few people. I was out. I'm not even sure where I was. It was pretty south, somewhere in Santan Valley. And I stopped at this just empty lot in this one house, and the dude came out pretty upset. And he's like, "Hey, can I help you with something?" And I was like, "No, not really, unless you want to help me level this tripod." And that wasn't a good response to begin with. And he was like, "What are you taking pictures of my house for?" And we talked it out, and it was pretty calm, but he was pretty upset. I'm very rebellious, though. I don't like people telling me I can't do something, or like those interactions. I'm like, this is what I'm doing. Like, what do you want to do about it? I don't know. Right. But I try and be pretty nice about it. I'm like, I'm just taking a picture of this car. I thought it was really cool. The light was hitting it quite well, and I wanted to create this image. And they're like, "Oh, okay, well."
In a lot of cases, people are kind of misinformed. I feel in some ways it's, I don't know how you say it. Like, it's just like you're taking something that's private to them, but at the same time, it's, I don't know, it's private to you as well, in a sense. This is a thing that you do.
Yeah. I think we came from a point, going to your nostalgia point, to where if you were to be taking those pictures during the times where those cars were new or those houses were new, people would have been honored for somebody to photograph their house. Fast forward to today, the 21st century, people come out and start asking, are you with the government? Right. What's going on? What are you doing in my house? And I think that's really, funny, not funny, but And
I think that something that I've realized too is it's definitely it's about how you handle it, for sure. Those cases where I try and be kind of snarky and, I'm like, hey, it doesn't ever get me anywhere. Usually I can talk my way out of situations. I've never had an altercation where it was like, you need to get the heck out of my, just get out of here before I shoot you. But I will say that there's been a lot of opportunities where when I've talked calmly first, or, just the other day I was talking to this guy, he was out washing his car. And I feel like sometimes people are like, go away. And other times people are way too trusting. After talking to this guy for like 5 minutes, I was like, hey, I'm just, I take pictures. Like, I'm out, I saw this car, I saw you were cleaning it. He's like, oh, you want to take it for a ride? He's like, just cruise it for a while. Literally throws me the keys. And I was like, I kind of feel weird doing that, but maybe I'll pull it out of your driveway and, I can set up a scene. He's like, yeah, absolutely. So it was surprising because sometimes, it's a very weird altercation. Other times it's like, wow, this dude's really nice. All it took was just talking, showing my intent, and then they equally become interested. He's asking questions about why I'm taking pictures and like what I do with that. And it provides opportunity. We got to talking about the studio and Phoenix Film Revival. And it's kind of cool, how opportunities can arise, but it's definitely about how you handle the situation, for sure.
Do you ever have to, or even just offer a print of the picture and go, hey, I'd love to give you a print if you let me? Or
I've offered to give 2 prints, because when I've talked to people, I'm like, hey, this is what I'm doing. Like, when I get this developed and printed, I'll bring it back to you. I dropped one off and I never knew the reception because I rang the doorbell and nobody answered, so I just left it in the front of the mailbox. But I've offered a couple times. Sometimes people are like kind of weird about that, though. The one time I offered, they're like, I don't know if I want a picture of my house. I was like, well, maybe it's when you see it, you might like it. They're like, all right, whatever. But they were just they just blew off the situation. They're like, why did you like my house? Like, what do you mean it was cool? It was funny.
Yeah, it's pretty funny how people don't see what they got sometimes, right?
Yeah,
that's art.
It's all perspective. What is it? Perception is reality. That's the thing. It's all about how you view a situation and view what you have. And
yeah, they'll live in a Frank Lloyd Wright, or they won't even know, like, why are you taking pictures of my house? There's an apartment complex a couple of streets over, made by a famous architect, basically across the street from the high school. And I want to go there and photograph it one day, but I'm like scared of having an altercation with somebody, going like, why are you taking pictures of this? I'm like, do you realize this guy's a famous architect, right? And they're like, it's like a big project. But yeah, it's pretty weird nowadays, though.
Yeah, it's so, people's reactions can be so back and forth. It's kind of funny.
Do you, when you go into a certain neighborhood, do you almost have like an idea? Do you pretend of like what kind of person lives in that house, who drives that car? Do you make your own little backstory with some of these photographs for your personal sake? Anything like that at all?
Sometimes I do, especially when there is no interactions. Like if it's really early and I see something, I can I always think about old TV shows right off the bat. Like when I grew up, I watched a lot of old 50s shows, and something that I always, anytime there's an old car, I'm just like instantly like, oh man, this could be a TV show. Mm-hmm. Like this is where these characters live. I don't really think any more into that aside from just being like very directorial, like, oh man, this could be the start. This is the scene where everything would start in this. It's kind of fun sometimes, actually, when I do get to interact with people. I took a picture of this one Mercedes in front of this guy's house, and he came out and he was talking to me, and he ends up saying that he had like hand built a bunch of vehicles that he had on his porch. He's like, yeah, come check these out. And those are always cool because then I can imagine, I'm like, oh man, I wonder what this car's been through. You know, this is really cool that there's a story behind it. And that's kind of cool to think about sometimes, where I'm like, man, every time I see that photo now, I'm like, oh man, this is like the Mercedes that one dude owned that has all these cars that he hand built, and there's like a documentary on them, and you're like, wow, what?
Oh, wow.
It's pretty crazy.
That's nuts.
Yeah.
That's super rewarding.
So, well, you just mentioned the directorial. Do you have a lot of, are there certain scenes in movies or even those old shows that influence in the way you compose a photograph? Is that something that you think about, or
you know, I as far as movies and stuff, I don't think that I take much influence from. I've never been a movie person. It's very hard for me to sit down and watch movies, which is kind of funny. Like I am into a lot of them, but sometimes it's very hard for me to sit down in one place and like invest in something like that. But I will say that sometimes, like the setup of a scene, I do think about in regard to it kind of being like the one thing you get to look at. Like when you're watching a movie, you only have that 1 second to understand the framing or where you're at. And I do try and think about that a lot. And I think that comes back to where I try and remove elements of distraction a lot in my photos. If there's something there that I don't want to be there, I try and think about it like, man, if this had to be perfect, or if this was a scene from something, like where can I hide it or position myself to fix everything in the frame to where I find it interesting, or to where I can make a story out of nothing. I use the dead space to kind of tell something, you know.
Where do you think your composition comes from? Other than, I see your composition, and I don't mean to, I feel like self-conscious. Well, this is what I see in your composition, this, that, and the other, but I see it's very geometric and balanced most of the time. Is that something that comes naturally to you, or again, what you just stated as far as you're very about removing what shouldn't belong in the photograph and just working at it from that angle, as opposed to like, okay, this needs to be here, right, that needs to be there. I think
it's a duality. I usually just, when I find something that I think is interesting to look at, I know I need to make an image out of, I will try and find a position to where I find that everything's hidden, that I don't want to be there. Everything that I want is still in the frame. And from there, I realized very quickly, back even shooting digital and after shooting film a lot, that you can't correct much after. You know, you can crop and stuff, but I wanted to keep the whole frame there, so I started paying attention to lines a lot. So in my frame, I'll usually always try and make sure that my frame line, or what I'm looking at, is balanced. You know, if for nothing else, I just try and make sure the camera's level. Because I don't like it when there's some crooked lines, or where like the building is not straight. I'd rather the subject be kind of off center, but everything in the background is, you know, level and straight. I try and keep not necessarily an even horizon line, but I just like everything being very, very balanced. And like you said, geometric. I think that a lot of it comes down to me almost just looking at the frame in lines. Even if there's a telephone pole, it's like, all right, this is in one place. I want to cut this off here. I want to make sure the house is cut off at a certain place, but it's all about keeping it pretty straight and balanced, I think.
Yeah, but bottom line, it's never about point and shoot. It's you.
Oh, I think about it a lot
and compose.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll sit sometimes for like 5 minutes or so before I shoot a picture, because it's just, I get frustrated with like, man, if I take this, then that's the one. So maybe I try and move around, or I'll switch my lens once or twice, and I'm just like looking at something like, I just don't like this element, or maybe I need to get closer and try something new. Switch sides maybe, or something, I don't know. But I spend quite a bit of time doing it. It's kind of frustrating for some people if they ever come with me, because I'm like, yo, come with me, I'm just going to take a picture real quick. And it turns into 15 minutes of them being like, did you get it? I was like, I hope so. I took one. We'll see. Let's go.
Yeah, I think that's funny when people want to come with you to photograph stuff. And it's like, dude, it's so boring. Why would you really? Oh, man. And everybody's like, it must be so easy. And I can only imagine going on a trying to make a photograph with you. It's like, all right, hold on, dude. We just wasted half hour. How many times did you click that?
It's funny. There are some people that I actually really like to shoot with because they can shoot with me in that same regard. Like, my buddy Zach is really good at coming with me, and he shoots a bunch of different frames and shoots 35 a lot. And it's like, he gets all the angles and it's really fun to shoot with him. But other times it's like going with people and it's like, oh man, so this is, you're just going to watch me do this for a while. It's funny. I love hanging out with people, but I always feel bad because I'm like, well, you're just going to kind of be sitting there unless you're going to come out and take pictures with me. But it's fun. It is funny. It's a time consuming process that I think a lot of people don't realize.
It's important though. I think it's that time is important. Lends to the style and lends to that feeling. In order to achieve that, you have to go through this process, and that's what makes your work and recognizable. And for other people, it's like boom. It's like going through and taking pictures really quick, and they don't put a lot of thought into it, and that's kind of their style. Maybe there is thought, but sometimes it's like they only have a fraction of a second to compose and so yeah, it's good.
Yeah, it's funny how as many different people there's many different ways of putting something on a film in our case, or just capturing it on digital. What not to ask the dorky question here. So what is your favorite film to use at sunrise?
Probably Ektar. I love Ektar.
Oh, yeah?
I love the fine grain. And I don't have an issue with using a tripod. I used to be very like, oh no, man, handheld only.
Yeah.
But I think that was like kind of it was a misguided way of thinking for a while. So I like shooting Ektar. I like shooting the lower speeds possible. If I have it, and now it's usually the most price effective is Portra 400. But it's usually just those two. And I mean, it's usually way cheaper to go with Ektar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ektar's not loved enough, I don't think.
I agree. I think that the thing is, people, I don't know. It's a perfect blend in my mind between, at least color-wise, Portra and Fuji. There's a little bit more greens and blues. There's not as much of, that orange or red tone necessarily, but I really enjoy it. I think that, I like the saturation of it. I enjoy a lot of the colors that it produces. I like the blues of the sky. Usually.
Yeah, I'm surprised people like you listen to these other photography podcasts. It doesn't seem that Ektar gets as much airtime as all these other films do. And when you shoot it, I'm like, what's wrong with this film? To me, it jumps pretty good right off with the colors, but nobody seems to want to talk about it. I think
it's just because of that low speed. I think the fact that it's 100 is like, it has people kind of like, it's almost standoffish. Even Portra is like 160 seems a little bit faster. You know what I mean? It's almost 200. It's there. But I feel like, I don't know. I feel like people don't necessarily like shooting with the lower speed films because a lot of people do shoot handheld. And I can see where that can become an issue, especially if if you have a certain style you want to stick to. It is something that you, at some points, will need a tripod for. Or maybe just, holding your breath a lot and just sitting there very still. But I enjoyed it a lot. I quite like it.
Now, I like what you just said, though, about the tripod. Because I went through that same thing as well. Like, forget with tripods, that's for,
right.
That's for nerds.
Right.
And then you start transitioning, and then I think in my head it was like necessity. I see a photograph that needs to happen, and it just simply cannot happen the way that I want it to handheld. Mm-hmm. When you photograph, what was the importance, or what was the turning point to where you said, "No, man, I got to burst out the tripod. I got to do this." Again, it seems the answer seems kind of obvious because you're at the crack of dawn with very little light. Is that more or less what happened, or where? Pretty much,
and I became interested in long exposures on film too when I started doing night stuff a lot, or rather morning photography really early. I knew that there was no way I was going to get an image. I mean, the bottom or the most open my lens would go is like 3.8. So there's no way I'm shooting anything, with 100 speed film without a tripod. There's just no way. I have to use one. And after using it once or twice, I realized I'm like, well, there are a few more elements to this that I can now control that I usually had a hard time with. Like, my big thing is keeping the shot level. And with handheld now, I'm way better at it. I can acknowledge things that help me, like, hold it right. But for me at the beginning, I was like, I kept being frustrated with my frames just being all crooked. And I'm like, well, a tripod would fix this. Like, I could actually see the shot that I'm going to make, and it's not me wasting it. I never wanted to be wasteful. I realized I was like, I can't just shoot these 10 shots like they're nothing. Like, it costs money to do. It's a process that, I'm taking my time for as it is. Why do I not, slow down a little bit more and pull out the tripod? Be okay with that.
Well, and that's funny to say, I think, now in a digital age where most of the shots that we take on a digital camera are just, you can waste them. You can go, okay, well, that didn't work. And you just, spray and pray, I think is what they call it. But starting off on film, is that something did you transfer that sort of mentality of don't waste every single shot when you shoot digital, and then that transferred again into shooting film? Or did you get into any quote unquote bad habits?
I think with digital, I still have a bad habit because I'll occasionally pull out my digital camera and I'll shoot something, or if I'm shooting something for work. But I feel like even when I grab a camera now, it feels like it's magic to me. It's like, whoa, how can I just keep shooting? Like, it's almost wild. So I feel like I do have a lot of those frames that are like, well, these are just throwaways. I was just pressing the button to hear the shutter sound at that point. There's like not a lot of purpose, but I try and be very mindful with what I'm shooting. And with a digital camera, I try and just not stop looking through the lens more. Like, I feel with film, I'll look at around the room and then I'll see something that I like, and I'm like, okay, this is something I'm like, cool, this is what I want to take the picture of. But with digital, it's something I'm like, I'm just going to keep staring through here until I find the moment and shoot those, because I feel like that's a lot easier to do with that. It's almost more 35 millimeter. That's almost how I feel with 35 millimeter. Sometimes I'm like, 36 frames? Like, this is crazy. I have so many photos I could take. I just end up wasting a few of them, but I try and slow down a lot. That's like my favorite part about film.
Well, it's hard to go crazy on carrying a big brick around, right?
An RB67, even at my full speed, I'm getting 3 shots out in 15 minutes. I'm like, okay, hold on, don't move. I'm trying to focus. All right, we're there. Okay, let's shoot it. It's a lot.
How long have you had that camera?
I've only had that camera for a year. Actually, I don't even know. Maybe 2 years now, a year and a half.
Oh, okay.
My roommate at the time had an RB67, and I started shooting his, and I was like, oh man, this is crazy. And much like everything else, like his film and other stuff he had, I just borrowed it for a long time. And I was like, I need one of these. This is the coolest thing.
Oh, yeah.
And I took it out for a while, and then I was like, all right, I'll buy one just so that I don't have to keep stealing your camera from you.
Have you shot large format?
Yes, I shot good few photos, large format, lots of color stuff. Jose was kind enough to give me a nice little stock of some slide film, some 4x5 Ektachrome, which has been amazing.
That stuff
is
gold.
Oh, it's so nice. So beautiful to look at. It's been fun. It's definitely, for me, it's gotten harder now because I feel like my style has changed to where I like being like a little bit closer, or maybe like not on people's property ever, but I like really getting up in the mix and in the business and stuff. So now with 4x5, it's always fun because it's, as it is, I have my tripod out and my big old camera that makes all the chunky metal noises, but 4x5 is really that thing that I'm like, I have to dedicate some time. Usually my 4x5 stuff is shot where it's like, I'll see something that I would have shot on medium format, but been like, this is too good. Like, maybe this deserves me coming back at a better time when the lighting is actually hitting it perfect and setting up this larger shot.
Yeah.
I've done.
How soon it is? How soon do you think it'll be before you start breaking into people's home at 4 a.m. and taking shots of the living room?
I don't know about that, but I might get a longer lens.
That would be a hell of a project.
Oh yeah. Oh, that's so funny.
Oh, wow. Somebody keeps breaking into my house.
Oh, no.
And you're like, well, the light isn't right at 4 a.m. I got to get in here at 5.
That's funny.
How is the medium format film camera the only camera that you have aside from a 35 millimeter, or are you silly like some of us and have cameras over there and they have 30 cameras in the room now?
I've got if you walk into my dining room, I've got like 45 plus cameras on the walls, just around on shelves and stuff. So I have a big old collection of a bunch of them. Most of them are Polaroid cameras, like we all started collecting at one point. I have a bunch of 600s, I have a bunch of Spectras, and I have the LAN cameras, which I used to love shooting back before I realized I should have invested money in FP100. Back when that stuff was still $15, $20 a pack, and you're like, oh, this is nice, instead of $60-something now, like it is.
The arrogance, I thought they would stay cheap.
I had an opportunity, so I found them for $15 a box on eBay once, and this guy had a bunch of them, and I was like, oh, this is a good deal, so I bought one, and maybe a month later, I realized how much of a mistake I had made in not buying more. I was so mad. I was like, I can't believe this. Like, I'll never shoot that film again, probably.
Price went up on that faster than Bitcoin.
Gosh, dude. Oh, man. For real. I was like, wow, this is crazy.
It'll cost you 5 Bitcoins now, or however these things are to... I just saw on eBay, so I go on eBay a lot and buy expired film and stuff like that, and it amazes me how 220 film went through the roof now, and it is just... I love 220 film. I love being able to get anywhere from 20 to 30 shots on medium format. Oh, yeah. And now I can't buy a roll for an average price of under $15 a roll. And I'm like, this is ridiculous, man. And again, you go back in the day, it was like, man, I should have bought a box for $10 when
my gosh, I know.
When I had the chance. And it's just crazy.
I think about that all the time.
Like, if you had a time machine, it's like, oh yeah, I'd go back in time and play the lottery. Nah, man, I'd go back and get all this film.
Yeah. Just all the film. I could have made so much money.
Dream. I keep telling Daniel, there's somewhere, there's a warehouse in Mexico or in a country full, like Montezuma's Gold, like just full.
For some reason, it's a giant fridge. It's been cold stored the whole time for years.
It's been in the basement and it's cold and it's in the mountains and you just got to go and find it. And there's a room full of 220 film somewhere, just waiting to get shot. And I know it. It's probably someplace in China, up in the somewhere. Russia somewhere. It's got to be.
Somebody just had a stash of all the film. They're like, I really like this stock. I want all of it.
Yeah. Somebody's going to turn that into a horror movie at the end, and they just like, oh, nobody shoots film anymore. Yeah. And they just throw it all away.
Oh, man.
Film's still flammable? You just, what? No.
So what, do you have other projects in the horizon that you've been thinking about shooting that you now have probably an opportunity to shoot? I don't want to say that maybe with this show or with upcoming shows that, boom, this project is done. But as long as you keep shooting that, is there something else that you kind of want to explore? I've seen some of your portrait work on there, even though there's not a lot of people in your landscape photography. Right. There's your portrait photography is really cool.
Thank you.
What other things do you is there any specific projects or anything else that you have lined up?
I think for the most part, my shooting's going to stay pretty similar. But I do have a few ideas of more storyline based projects that I want to work on. But I think that for the most part, this show will just be about one part of. I'm trying to think of how to phrase this. This show is very much dedicated to the idea of a lot of the car photographs. And I don't think that I want to change necessarily my theme, but my subject will change, if that makes sense. I don't think that I'll try and shoot as many pictures of cars or maybe keep that as the forefront of the photography, but I think that I want to keep with the theme of the sunrise and a lot of... It's all about light for me, all about quality of light, and I love the sunrise. That's like my favorite time.
And so, in the sense, like still... feeling the sunrise and feeling maybe nostalgic,
yes,
but with other subject matters as well. 100%. I think that would be awesome.
Yeah, I think that eventually I do want to get into the more staged style photos, maybe using people, not necessarily portrait stuff, but maybe even incorporating, human subjects into the frame as well. But I think that that's something that I want to take some time doing and putting together for sure.
Always on film.
Always on film. Yeah. If I ever switch back over to digital, it's because someone sponsored me or something like that. Like, you want to send me a Hasselblad? Absolutely. Please do. Phase 1, why not?
Minimum medium format.
Exactly.
Though, right?
Exactly. No, it has to be a medium format digital, at least. Yeah, for sure.
What, I know we kind of touched on this a little bit, but is there something else besides the size of the negative and the detail that draws you to medium format over 35 millimeter? Is it besides maybe aspect ratio or the way your depth of field acts in certain?
I think that depth of field had a little bit to do with it in the beginning, because I was really into the idea of like doing portraits and stuff. And when I first started shooting, I was like, oh man, I want to have that crazy fall off, or just the eyes are in focus, and have that kind of like the bellow focused look, which was big for me at the beginning. But now it became more about the versatility. I like that I can, I can throw a roll of 120 into a 645, a 6.7, or a 6x6. I have option to kind of change up my framing a little bit, or change the way that I think about putting together an image just by changing the camera, or, making it more portable if I do want to go with, a Yashica matte or something, and do the twin lens where I just can take it on the go really quickly. I enjoy that there's some flexibility there where I can still keep quality. But then I'm the restriction too. I'm really big. I love the ability of only having like 10 shots or 15 shots max, 16 shots. I like the fact that it's like, this is all you have. I enjoy that. And I think that with 35, I'm better at it now, but I think that with 35, I did that thing where I just would see something. I was like, oh, that might be cool. And I shot it. And oh, that might be cool. And I shot it. Where when I started shooting medium format, it was really like, this would be cool, but can I make it look how I want it to? Okay, like, what do I need to do to get it where it will look the way I intend it to look? And I like really being forced to sit down and think about that, because those are when I have my favorite images. Like, I never like the ones where I'm like, oh, this will be cool, and I snap it really quick. I'm like, why did I do that? Why did I just, I always look back like, why did I waste that? I should have waited for that moment that I knew that something clicked where I was like, this is the one. This is what I want to see. And I like those moments. I hate having to go over that roll when you're scrolling through and you're like, oh man, this is a good one. But right here is just, why did I shoot that picture? Like, I knew in the moment too, like, oh, maybe I shouldn't take this, but I shot it anyway. And sometimes they're all right, but I like the idea of really knowing my intent of the outcome. I want to know it before I shoot it.
You just touched on something that I think is almost also part of the theme here. So we've talked about you being a perfectionist. We talked about you basically, for the most part, at least for this show, shooting during a certain time of the day, shooting within a certain frame limit. It's almost like these are really what a lot of people would see as limitations. Yet you've somehow found freedom with these limitations. Is that something that you've kind of also projected out? I mean, it's obvious that you're very comfortable and you find these freedoms and these limitations, but aside from 10 frames, have you ever felt limited to creating because you only have a certain quote unquote box that you've created yourself in? And again, going into these are all shot on film, and in certain cases, even limiting people coming out and confronting you about shooting certain things.
Right.
Have you ever noticed that before as well? Like within this parentheses of life and creative, you found this freedom to do what you want and how you want to approach.
Yeah, I think that a big thing for me at the beginning was like not knowing what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to be creative, and I knew I wanted to make something. I'm always trying to make something, but I think that I was taught a little bit more recently to use limitations as a creative exercise. Things get done when you tell yourself there's a goal. If you have something that you have to do within a certain parameter, usually you can get it done by just pushing. That's at least how I work. I work very well with like pressure. If something needs to happen by a certain point, that's how I end up doing something. Without that restriction, I often get, I just stay still. I get stationary and I don't do anything. So I tried and use limitation as a creative driver for sure. I try and recognize like, okay, if I have a goal, which is to make something, and a limit of only, let's say, 10 frames to do it, or the fact that it's on film, the fact, if I have limitations in place, I usually have more drive to do something and to think about it, and try and do it well right off the bat.
Is photography your main creative output or creative source?
I would say currently it's my main medium, but I don't ever want to be just a photographer. I will say that. I think that I have a lot of other mediums and medias that I like to express myself through. And currently, the one that I found the most interesting and the one that I'm trying to dive into is photography. But I like painting. I've always liked painting. Design and stuff like that I enjoy. But I think that right now, I've been enjoying almost the idea of like having something to do. Shooting is something like that's my creative process. I used to wake up really early and then have my hour in the morning and I'd paint or, I'd draw for an hour and try and do that, which was fun. But now I enjoy that, like the idea of like, oh man, today I wake up and this is what I go do. And that it's been helping me create and helping almost inspire myself to do more aside from that.
Do you think if you couldn't get up in the morning for whatever reason, maybe you found I don't know, maybe your job situation changed, do you think it would still be important for you to have a certain set of time aside during the day to be able to create, as opposed to it'll just come for me whenever?
Yeah, I think that I definitely, if I ended up having, let's say, to work from 4 a.m. until, 1 p.m. or some weird, I don't know, I think that I definitely still have to find time throughout the day to set aside and be like, oh, this is my thing. I'd probably create a schedule out of maybe, getting a coffee in the afternoon and then going and shooting or something. But it is more about just setting aside time for sure. Yeah.
If there was somebody out there that that was on the fence of maybe trying to not necessarily be a photographer, but want to start creating something and maybe get out of some sort of daily routine rut that has potential to be creative but isn't doing so, what type of advice or what kind of insight would you give to someone like that? Like, hey, aside from, hey man, just get up and do it. Mm-hmm. Because again, it seems like there's something very specific that you do every morning. You have a routine, mm-hmm. and a lot of artists had routines as well when they had time to create. Is starting a routine as important? Is that something that you would at least advise someone to start, at least with people who have problems coming up with ideas photographically? Or what would you advise them to do, I think?
I don't even think it takes necessarily a routine, but I would say create goals for yourself. Mm-hmm. I think that if there's a goal, even if it's not, by the end of the day, by the end of the week, create a goal of, all right, well, by the end of this month, I will have made something, whatever it is that you would want to create. And I think beyond that, do it for yourself. Create something that you want to see. That was my biggest thing when I first started doing something. Instagram kind of ruined it for me for a while there because I started seeing photographs and I wanted to, be very aesthetic. I was like, oh man, I should shoot this, this pink light with this certain time to try and fit some aesthetic of what I was seeing. And I realized after, I'm like, why am I taking this picture? Like, I don't find this interesting myself. I was just taking it because it was like fitting a theme or very like aesthetic. And once I started shooting something, I'm like, oh man, I enjoy this. I would like seeing this. Once I started just capturing things that made me happy or that I enjoyed looking at, that's when I started to find more success in what I was doing and to be more inspired. I was like, this is, it's not for anybody else. It's really just, if you're making something, it should make you feel good about it first. And if other people like it, that's awesome. But that's what I would say.
Awesome. I could sit here all night and keep asking you questions, man, but
I got one.
Go for it, man. I'm like, go for it.
Yeah. So Ilford's going to be dropping some news on us the 24th. They're going to be releasing some film. I don't know if it's an old emulsion or if it's a new emulsion, but they're hinting at 35 millimeter 120 in some square-ish format, 2x3 or whatever that is. What sort of film would you want to see come back, or what kind of film would you like to shoot on that doesn't exist currently? Oof. This is a request for those companies out there listening. Isaiah's preferred.
Well, I love color. Color film's my favorite. I shoot black and white, but it doesn't see the light of day very often. It's often for more personal stuff or more experimental stuff. So I would probably say something like like one of the weird Fuji stocks for 120 would be awesome. Seeing a bunch of different weird stocks for 120 would be nice, because there's actually a lot of options still, or at least, I mean, not a ton, but there's a lot of interesting options for 35 millimeter that you could still get out there. They're harder to come by, but even like what is it, Fuji Natura 1600 or something like that?
Yeah.
That would be insane to see in 120. Man. That would just be a wild, like, I don't even care about high-speed films usually, but I just think that would be kind of interesting.
It'd be fun stock.
It'd be fun. It'd be fun to play around with.
Right.
Higher speed 120 would be really interesting to me.
Sweet.
Yeah, I don't understand. Like, I keep thinking one of the reasons that even 120 isn't dead yet is because I hate blaming hipsters, but in this instance, bless them for not killing 120 stock.
Right.
And actually, in some places, bringing it back in certain cases. But
we're supposed to be getting Exochrome to be dropping the end of this year. Hopefully.
Happy with that.
They took forever on the 35 millimeter, so hopefully we get that at least.
I like to. I appreciate the 50 the Ilford 50 speed, the plus. Damn it, I can't remember the name of it right now. I have fridge stock full of them, but
is it Pan F?
Yeah. But I really love the Neopan 100, but that's I don't know. I haven't checked the price lately, but that was crazy. It went through the roof as well, and I don't know if they're going to stop making that, or they might have already stopped. And hopefully that comes back. Fuji makes some great film, man. They do. I mean, I love my Tri-X, and Kodak, but Fuji is
supposedly Acros. Is
I was going to say Acros is supposed to come back, right? So,
yeah,
I mean, that's going to be interesting.
Well, we'll see. Hopefully,
fingers crossed on that.
We needed more hipsters to start buying it. That's for sure.
That's what it
more people need. No, we need to get more people involved with film, and this is what this is all about. So hopefully, people stop by your show, see the magic that can be done on film.
Yes, come by
and start up on their journey as well.
Yeah, definitely. We have plenty of opportunities to see your show. It'll be up from November 1st through December. We have like first Friday in November. There's like Grand Ave Festival. There's third Friday. There's right after third Friday is we have another photo walk planned with another group, and then December 1st Friday. I think there's a couple other opportunities to check it out as well. So
if I don't see you the first time, you've got plenty of options.
As they'll be there waiting. So, yeah.
Nice. And in the future, I would love to have you host a workshop.
Yes, I'm definitely into that.
I don't know. I think it'd be fun for a second thinking about it, like getting up at 4 in the morning and meeting
Danny's
you somewhere.
Not a morning person.
And
I would actually love that. That'd be the funnest thing. We'll rent a little bus or something, or a van, and we'll just all cruise at 4:30 in the morning.
Yeah.
Isaiah comes around and picks everybody up.
It'd be really funny. Usually when I do that, everyone's half asleep, and I think that'd be hilarious to have a bunch of half asleep photographers. I feel like it wouldn't be that hard, though. It's not too bad. Yeah. If you shoot nature and stuff, you're probably used to it.
Yeah. Those guys are crazy, too.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Isaiah.
Absolutely.
Appreciate you coming on to talk about your work. Really excited for your show. I'm sure everybody else is. And thank you, Danny, for asking all the important questions.
Yeah, sorry I hogged it up, man, but great photographer. I got a bunch of great questions and a bunch of maybe not so great questions, but yeah.
Definitely.
Well, I appreciate it. Yeah. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, thank you. All right, well, that was a lot. Isaiah had plenty of things to say.
Yeah, I'm sorry that I hogged up that conversation, but man, I could have asked that guy questions for days, man.
Oh, no worries. You definitely have all the questions. And sound like Isaiah had some pretty good answers in there too.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, we have the photo walk coming up, so make sure you come out to that. That's going to be on Friday. Also, obviously, come out to Isaiah's show. Come support his show as well as the community. Participate. It's an opportunity to come look at someone's work that they've spent a lot of time on, and also connect with other photographers We'll have the dates up on the website. That's phxfilmrevival.com/events. And that'll have all the dates. Thank you guys for your support. Without you, we wouldn't be able to keep this going. Give photographers the opportunity to show their work, keep the lights on for Phoenix Film Revival, or off in some cases.
Yes.
For our workshops and such. So thank you guys for your support. If you would like to make a contribution to the studio, you can visit our Patreon. It's patreon.com/PHX Film Revival. We'll have a link on the website as well. There's a couple tiers on there that'll help us out if you're able to support one of those. And also social media. We're on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, mostly active on Instagram, but just a message and be sure to follow us. That's at PHX Film Revival.
All right.
Thank you guys. And until next time, go shoot some film.